It's live,
provocative, and digs deep into the issues.
It's KFM's Hot Seat.
The hottest debate on all relevant topics, live on KFM's Hot Seat tonight.
KFM's Hot Seat.
Every weekday, 7 to 8 p.m. KFM's Hot Seat, only on 933 KFM.
Welcome to this edition of the Hot Seat this Friday, the 3rd day of May 2024, and with me in the studio is a panel of the most experienced journalists and panelists to discuss the major events of the week. But I have a special guy, Joseph Beyanga. Because Joseph Beyanga started with this radio station in 2001. He has worked here for 23 years. He grew from the ranks from cleaner to general manager of the radio station. Now, Joseph. And I have to sing your praises before you go, Joseph, because you see, Joseph was the producer, the technical producer of Andrew Mwenda Live, but he also, him and Angelo was doing the editorial production, he was doing the technical production, but sometimes we'll also do the editorial production. I think he's the best human being I have ever worked with in my life. He has only one rival, a young man called Charles Kanche, who has been working with me at the Independent. So Joseph, I want to thank you for being such an efficient, wonderful, amazing human being to work with. For 5 years, we produced the most popular radio show in Uganda. For 5 years, we worked every day together, Monday to Friday, and for 5 years, we never had a single quarrel. I cannot believe that. For a man like me who is a perfectionist and always quarreling with everybody, thinking things are not working, you must be the most super efficient, competent human being in the whole of Uganda, from Kisoro to Kotido, and from Arua to Busia.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
I want to honor you. And then before you go, I wanted to launch a tirade against this government for its standards on press freedom.
That's when I'll sit down.
Okay. Today is Press Freedom Day, and we want to discuss the state of free expression and free media in Uganda. I want to begin with Joseph. Tell us, what do you feel?
I feel,
according to Freedom House, freedom of expression and freedom of the press in Uganda, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, Uganda's indicators are declining. According to me, we are always free to discuss anything.
We are always free to discuss everything, but most of the time you do that and you are ready to face the consequences. As they say, we can go through it all. Andrew, you and me have been here, and I can tell you, I've seen enough. I've seen enough of the freedom. As long as there's no political contestation, the freedom of speech in Uganda does well. But the moment they enter into a political season, you definitely face the other side of the government. This comes in many forms. One, I've had a benefit of serving on National Association of Broadcasters. So I know the kind of negotiations at times you have to enter into with the powers that be to make sure the media. It's almost a give and take. And then also managing the radio station for some time and being involved,
They haven't closed you since they closed us.
Thank you very much. Since you last caused trouble.
Yeah. That is 19 years ago.
Since you last caused trouble. The other issues you have to deal with.
Have you been pursuing press freedom, or have been cowardly?
This is what happens. Andrew, before you host so-and-so, you've advertised and everything, and somebody calls you, hey, today you're hosting Andrew Mwenda. Now be careful on this one, But you know how these things are. That kind of, somebody has not told you don't host him, but they've said don't go that area. That should I call it threat, intimidation, and stuff like that? At times you get people calling you with phone numbers you can't trace. It's a private number, you can't call back. Someone calls you, you don't know who they are. So, and then away from that, you come to what happens in the field. From 2001, when Besigye popped up with Reform Agenda, we remember what Kakoza Mutale did. It was not only against the media, but even to other people and all that, but mostly the media. It's like every election, the brutality against the media just keeps going up and up and up and up until when we had people's skulls being cracked in the last election. So if you ask me in that area, as long as there's no political contestation, Andrew, I can bet we can be here, discuss anything. But the moment power is at stake, things go bad.
Which is understandable.
Which is understandable. You'd think we should be getting better because our democracy, from the time we went to party when we voted in that referendum in 2000 what? When was the referendum? 2005?
I think 2005. November.
2005, and we chose to go to party, and you'd think our landscape should be getting better. There should be. We've had our constitution. Our constitution, how many years old? 2019, what?
It is about 30 years next year.
So, chapter 4 of it, if you look at it, are we doing a good job in promoting and upholding those freedoms? I wouldn't say we are.
So let me ask this, the journalists. I want to introduce him because.
Do you want to ask the journalists or the young guys? Derek.
Yes, the young guys. The reason I don't introduce him, I was afraid you were going to run away. So we have Joseph Sabiti. He's the spokesperson of Parliament, and we will be discussing the sanctions against the Speaker. We have Derek Wandera. He is a journalist here with the Daily Monitor. We have Questa Baro. He is from the Leo Africa Institute, and I think one of the most brilliant Ugandans alive. And then we have Frank Mujimba. I always forget and call him Don Mujimba. He's a banker and the most conservative person on this show. The country's leading homophobe. And then
Andrew, stop labeling people.
My grandson's name? Rogers Magala, who is also a reporter with the Daily Monitor.
Why are you labeling people?
The guy is a homophobe. Do you deny?
No. Why are you labeling people and biasing the perception by the audiences?
No, but that's what
that's not correct.
I have already biased. I have labeled you as a very competent person. You didn't complain.
No. The two are different.
He's very proud of his credentials as Uganda's homophobe #1. And he's going to be sanctioned by the Americans. Rogers Magala is a reporter also here. So I want to begin with you, Kwezi. You came late, you should be whipped, but you will pay only a fine of 100,000 shillings.
Late.
Yes. Whom were you doing in Munyonyo?
Kwezi, before he distracts you, late is late. It's okay. Yeah.
But I should tell you guys this. When we started Andrew Mwenda Live, this show started on the 5th of March. It was a Monday, 5th March 2001. We said it will always begin at 7.
Not 2 minutes past 7.
No.
Not 1 minute past 7.
Not 30 seconds.
For 5 years, Joseph and I ran the show, and it started at exactly 7.
And we bounced one famous guest who arrived late.
Winnie Byanyima. She came late, said, "You go back. We cannot accept late coming." Because she said she's so powerful, she can never anything. She could not believe that I would dismiss her out of the studio for coming late. So then the standard was set. Even Museveni arrived right on time. He arrived, I think, 30 minutes early when he was coming to this show. The only bad thing he did, he took over the city, remember?
Yeah. They had to turn the table.
We had a seat designed like semicircular. So the host would sit at the head of the table. He came and sat at he became the host, I became the guest.
But you had a question for Kwezi.
Yes, Kwezi. Joseph has given a long tirade against how Uganda is hostile to press freedom. Every day I am on radio, I'm on social media, Ugandans are discussing everything under the roof. What is your own view of the state of press freedom in Uganda? Today is Press Freedom Day.
I think, as the President always says on NRM's Victory Day, that we've come from so far. And I think you can't remove Uganda's democratic progress from... you can't dismiss the press's contribution to Uganda's democratic progress and deepening of democracy and the rule of law. And to that end, institutions like the Nation Media Group, or rather the Daily Monitor, have contributed significantly. No wonder that many of our journalists, once they leave here, they go on to work for the same president who says that the Daily Monitor is an enemy paper. I think most of his private secretaries and spokespersons have come from this very media house. But also, one thing that the Ugandan press...
Don Wanyama is one of them. Onapito Komorait is
Yes.
another.
Linda Navasai.
Yes.
All of them.
Even the one who is running digital, Nelson
Bwire.
he was digital here.
Yes, but to take a much wider look.
Does that show the man is in charge here?
Okay, let's leave Uganda. But I think if you look at on the African continent, it doesn't matter whether a country is a democracy or a dictatorship. Uganda still ranks amongst those media markets where the media has really grown. So it can't be that the media has grown while Uganda has become more autocratic. But also, if you look at most of the breakthroughs, you just need to travel to some of these countries, including some of the most advanced economies on our continent, and you just buy a copy of the daily newspaper. Our newspapers are far more advanced outside of the markets of Kenya and South Africa. You pick a newspaper in Ghana, it's like you're buying the Daily Monitor of 1995.
That's true.
The depth of the reporting, even the grammatical errors and things like that. So the press in Uganda has set for itself a very unrealistic standard. And sometimes when we are unable to meet that, we think it's because of the operating environment.
But you are talking about the growth of the press as a business rather than as a platform for free expression.
But you see the two go hand in hand. Yes, they do.
Not necessarily.
But I'm saying the fact that you're able to publish the ills that Museveni commits and the police beatings of opposition leaders is a sign that the media is thriving. Whether your copy sales are going up or not, I'm not discussing copy sales because there we are not doing very well. But also, only a few countries in Africa. Do you have only a few countries in Africa?
Which other African country has the kind of harassment we witness against the media?
Oh, very many.
I'm just asking.
Very many. I can list them, starting with South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Ghana. All those countries, do you consider democracies?
I'm not talking about
They are journalists in exile. Do you know of any Ugandan journalists in exile? Do you know one?
Do you know how many Ugandan journalists?
No, do you know one Ugandan journalist in exile?
Yes.
They are crippled in Uganda. They can go to the same courts. They can go to the same courts and win against the government of Uganda and get fundamental laws like the Sedition Act overturned. I think that's something we have not credited the media for in Uganda. And even beyond the media, we've contributed to the democratic space, not just by reporting and being the fourth estate, but actively participating. People like Wafula Gutu have gone on to become the leader of opposition. Many of the news reporters have gone on to serve in government.
Wasn't this Ibrahim Samuju one time a leader of opposition or something?
No. Chief whip
of the opposition. Yes, he was a journalist here.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we've come a long way. There's still
so you think
much.
Uganda deserves some credit on this matter?
It deserves some credit.
Sabit, you were in the media. Now
who
you're in the
received
government.
Sabit, did you ever?
No, Sabit, let me ask you this way. When you were in the press,
Yes.
you felt there was a lot of repression from the state. Now you're in the state looking at this.
Repressing us.
You see, facts are facts. Whether you are at the Observer, in this working for the state, or in the newsroom, there are fundamental challenges that the practicing journalists face in this country. It doesn't matter whether you try to hide your head in the sand or not.
What are the practical challenges?
I have my own experiences. We have had to sprint. The last one was in Kololo, where military police gave us a warm-up. Yes.
Napoleon.
Commanded by Napoleon.
What did he do?
Oh God!
Oh, he gave us a good warm-up for... We had gone to cover Bobby Wine.
Irene Abaro has never left a wheelchair.
We had gone to cover Bobby Wine submitting a petition to the UN Human Rights Office together with Irene Abaro, I think Henry from New Vision and myself.
And you're beaten?
I walked on crutches for a few days. But yes, I did.
In Uganda? Which year was this?
It's from South Sudan.
Because I'm Congolese doesn't mean I live here, really.
So which year was this? 2021?
That's 2021.
After the elections.
Yes, after the elections. But also, I think that the biggest part is what Joseph is talking about, the silent... I know from my experience that you can be driving home and two borders ride after your gate saying nothing, And then when you park, when you enter, they also go. When you're leaving in the morning, they ride in front of you, and you can't tell what is happening.
And then out of nowhere, somebody calls you and says,
yes,
look in your side mirror.
Your side mirror.
Do you see those guys?
See those guys?
Yeah.
Anything could happen. Yes.
So how come I don't get these threats?
Andrew, I always tell you this.
And you're one of them.
No. but also, these are the ones.
I
always
think
talks
I am
about.
the leading critique of government. Every day I'm criticizing the government. I don't get.
No, Andrew is privileged. Andrew is privileged. Andrew is friends with the country's chief of defense forces. Andrew's brother is the commander land forces. Andrew's sister is a minister in charge of health. Who is going to touch Andrew?
All those people are not there.
And he's a
spokesperson of PLU. Really?
And PLU is an activist organization which is very critical of government.
No.
And which is headed by CDF.
Yes.
Do you want us to discuss that also?
No, we can
But
discuss
Andrew,
it later,
the
but
part that-
we have taken another break. We'll be right back.
The hottest debate on all relevant topics live.
On KFM's Hot Seat tonight.
KFM's Hot Seat covers all the relevant topics every weekday, 7 to 8 p.m. The K-Zone. KFM's Hot Seat.
Hot Seat.
Hear the real story behind the story. Coming right at you.
Only on 933
KFM.
You can't host that man.
Welcome back to this edition of the Hot Seat, featuring a large part of journalists and panelists to discuss the major events of the week. I have Joseph Sabiti, Joseph Yanga, Rogers Magala, Frank Mujimba, Derek Wandera, and Questabaro. Questabaro, can you put your phone down so that we can have a focused discussion? Stop watching porn on your phone.
And you know, Andrew is next to Kwezi.
So I can see what he's seeing on his phone.
Andrew is quite credible, so
You can't just say anything without saying.
Okay. So guys, back on press freedom, I want to come to you, Derek. You are a journalist. Do you feel your freedom to express yourself is threatened because every day you come here, you speak freely?
And he has covered Noop most.
Andrew.
And the government knows you are a Noop activist or a Noop journalist, and no one has arrested you.
Andrew, there has been always a saying that there is freedom of expression, but no one can guarantee you freedom after expression. And that has happened to many journalists. I have, in my experience I have been arrested while covering
Kalangala Island.
in Kalangala Island.
By SFC.
By SFC. Your grandson is in SFC.
No. I had my grandson called the former Inspector General, Deputy Inspector General of Police.
Mzee?
No,
Was it?
the guy who died.
Yes.
Lokech.
Yes, by Paul Lokech was.
Were you arrested by Paul Lokech?
I was arrested by SFC.
Can you even identify the people who
You
arrested
can't even. They were all.
Because
they were
I
all masked up.
remember we
so
negotiated.
how do you know they're SFC?
Because I know that they were SFC.
Oh,
To get him Andrew, I think to get him out, we negotiated with like 5 different power brokers
To get him released.
And they arrested
But
me.
this is a contradiction, because when you read Ugandan media, there is so much criticism of government that even borders on subversion. Nobody, the journalists walk free. We come here.
It's not true. It's not true that we walk free. It's not true. For instance, I have had very many phone calls. I have had many people trailing me up to my home. At some point, I had to shift three times in 1 month.
And stay in a safe house at some point.
You know, and stayed in a safe house to make sure that I'm safe, because of the trails, because of the phone calls, because of every kind of intimidation. And that's the kind of situation we work in. Irene Abalo, for now 3 years, I think,
In a wheelchair.
she was covering me. I had just come from that kind of. Actually, I was running away from that kind of torture. So I told Irene that I don't feel safe. Can you step in for me? I went into hiding. That the day Irene stepped in for me, up to today, she has never left a wheelchair. And so many others. Today, I was seeing very many journalists sharing blood all over social media. Broken heads.
We're running out of time. I need to come to you, Rogers. Is that your experience as a journalist?
For me, what I have to say is, when you look at what is happening in the media,
Derek, now you have gone on
against
porn. Can you leave porn?
against the press today, we have stories that have been bought off. The government doesn't want some stories to be covered. We had the journalist from the Daily Monitor, Tony Abet, that was arrested at the Lubowa Specialized Hospital.
No, the site.
The site. The site.
Not this.
He went and he was arrested.
Why?
For no good reason, because actually they said it was trespass. Yet he informed people that were at the site, the managers at the site, and they allowed him. But all of a sudden, he was arrested, and also the people that gave him access to the place were arrested as well. So you look at some stories, especially those that are inclined to politics, they will have backlash from government. That's now why you see people have resorted to social media, because people can speak freely. But again, those that have backing, let me say like the spies, they can be spared. But those that are not
They have been
backed by power, they are taken off.
Okay, I want to come to the conservative on this show.
There's something it touches, if you may allow me, thank you. Something it just touches on, and which ties into this year's theme of World Press Freedom Day, which is some stories you can do, some stories you can't do. We've seen many journalists actually have their fingers burnt and arrested and tortured and all that when they try to do stories around encroachers on gazetted wetlands, forests and all that. If you try to send a journalist into Mabia Forest, their story won't come out, they won't come out with everything intact. We've had the same happen with the guys who are trying to cover the encroachment on Zuka Forest. We've had...
What happens?
Go ahead and tell the story.
I actually covered a bit of the conflict at Zoka Forest when I arrived between Jumani and Amuro. But when I arrived, in the first 3 minutes, I was arrested. So I don't know up to today. So the only thing that happened is that as they were taking me in, I had my phone and I dialed the contact of Asan Kasinje, who was it was spokesperson, I think director Interpol. Yeah. Then I said so I think the phone calls came down, and when they asked for the reason of the arrest, it was not given. But I think the officer there had orders: anybody carrying a camera, take them for vacation. Yeah.
So we see a lot of that happening on people who are trying to tell stories of encroachers on wetlands, encroachers on gazetted land, forest, game reserves, and that the impact it has had on the environment, because the media is not free to tell the stories of the kind of destruction going on.
I want to hear from Frank. You are the conservative on this show, and you represent the Bahima ruling clan.
Old man, it is sometimes unfortunate. Violation on the rights of journalists is not something that happens on a daily, but on a day it happens. Sometimes it is so brutal. You've seen some what I would call footage of journalists being beaten when they are covering some of these stories. And recently, a journalist was hit, and I think she lost her tooth during the protests, I think in Najana Nkumbi. So when it happens, it is really brutal, but it is not something that happens on a daily. But then the question that I would have, because most of the people here are journalists, yes, you have press freedom to really express yourselves, but does it have a limit? Do you have a stake? Do you have a responsibility of protecting the state? For example, if the story you are covering is contradicts with the national security, should you be given freedom to go ahead and publish such a report?
Who defends national security in this case?
The law.
So the law does not have a definition of national security. That's a very arbitrary term, because you say what is a threat to national security? Assuming a soldier procuring arms procured junk military equipment. Who is a bigger threat to national security? The soldier who stole money and bought junk equipment which renders the country vulnerable to foreign attack, or the journalist who exposes him so the government can correct that mistake?
That depends on who is making that decision.
This is what I'm saying. You can say, if you expose a story in the public that we have junk military equipment, then you are endangering national security because the enemies of Uganda will attack.
We know that you have junk weapons and they will attack this number.
But then why are you buying junk?
The other thing is you have bought junk until the biggest
It could have
threat.
been an error.
Okay. So even if it was an error, the bottom line is that it is not the job of journalists to keep government secrets.
Yeah.
So if government cannot keep its classified information properly, why does it transfer that responsibility to us journalists? I have always asked this question when I was still a practicing journalist. One, I used to expose military corruption in Uganda. And the president would call me and say, you're endangering national security. I said, the people endangering national security are those who are stealing, really. Me, I am reinforcing it by alerting you, unless we have coffee every morning, so they can share my intelligence with you or my information. But the other thing, of course, is that the soldier who bought junk equipment is not punished. He has risked national security. Me, who is exposing him, you are saying I'm only. I mean, but I want to come to you.
And Andrew, just if I can just take 10 seconds. The one aspect that each of us has not talked about is that the abuse of rights of journalists is not a monopoly of the state actors. One of the biggest abusers of press freedom and intimidating journalists are the grand ayatollahs in the opposition.
That's correct. I agree with you.
People who are they don't make mistakes. They say the tasowia. Whatever they do, whatever they say is right.
And that's why I have been at war with them. Besigye and Bobby Wine have been targets of my cobra bites. But the simple reason that's the most opposition. You cannot say that because Besigye stands in opposition to Museveni or Bobby Wine, then
therefore they are holy. Yes, they should not be scrutinized.
That I've refused, and I criticize them unfair and knowing that I'm being unfair, if only to assert an idea. And they point to the opposition that you don't stand on a moral pedestal and think that you are the most self-righteous persons in the world. We should hold you to account long before you come to power, because you should not come to power thinking you're God. But Kwesi, I just want to say that whenever we journalists discuss media freedom, we tend to focus on only the negatives, and therefore we only hold on a small part of the story and leave the bigger part. My own view is that if you look at social media in Uganda, if you look at press, there's no systemic and systematic suppression of press freedom. What Joseph and Joseph have expressed, and Derek here, are episodic. You see, there are states which have a systematic approach to suppressing media freedom, and that's why you cannot express an opinion.
Facebook is not in Uganda.
But
Facebook is not a newspaper.
It's part of media. But what I'm saying is
no. But also, Derek, that's not true. Facebook is actually working here. If I go now,
Derek, you're derailing the point.
If I go now, I will find you on Facebook.
Let's get the answer from him.
The answer on what exactly? Because
I was saying that the journalists, because at least for you, you're not a journalist, focus on that small part when they are hurt. It may constitute 10% of their work. But 90% journalists in Uganda, I feel, are free to express themselves on social media, on traditional media, in markets, bars. You can say anything in Uganda, and there is no systemic suppression of your feelings.
I agree, and I think our focus on press freedom is very uncritical, because you can't have freedom in an unfree society. There are so many unfreedoms even outside of press freedom. Do the leaders or decision makers in Uganda have the freedom to make the best decisions in the best interests of Ugandans without interference from outsiders and other forces? If they can't, the president of Uganda can't exercise a free hand, then why are you as a journalist convinced that somehow Museveni will excuse will allow everything else and protect your freedoms? I think that's where the issue stems from, that sometimes the press, I should say, focuses, is self-indulgent. Because the same forces, once you stand up and fighting for media freedoms, you're the ones who win the awards, you're the one who gets dinners with presidents and all that. At the end of the day, undermining the very freedoms you claim to fight for.
Anyway, because we have a very important issue, the sanctions against the Speaker, and we have the spokesperson of Parliament here, the next 30 minutes are going to be devoted to discussion on that. We'll be right back.
KFM's Hot Seat.
It's hot.
It's live, provocative, and digs deep into the issues. It's KFM's Hot Seat. The hottest debate on all relevant topics, live
On KFM's Hot Seat tonight.
KFM's Hot Seat covers all the relevant topics every weekday, 7 to 8 p.m.
Welcome back to this edition of the Hot Seat featuring a part of the most experienced journalists and panelists to discuss the major events of the week. I have Quest Tabaru, I have Derek Wandera, I have Rogers Magala, I have Franka Mujimba, and I have Joseph Sabiti. I want to begin with you, Joseph, because you're the spokesperson of Parliament. The Speaker has been sanctioned by the British. Before we come to that, just for our listeners' benefit, what does this mean? When they sanction her, it means she cannot own a house in Britain, she can't buy dresses from there, she can't use a British bank. What does it mean? Can she have an account in Standard Chartered Bank and money works and it works in Uganda?
Andrew, I am not an expert in sanctions, but my understanding of what the UK says is that it means you have travel limitations, you can't go to the UK, you can't own assets in the UK, you can't make financial transactions in the UK and within its networks, which in this case, I can speak with authority that the person of Anita Among does not own a bank account in the UK, does not own a house, has travelled to the UK once in her 3 years as Speaker and Deputy Speaker. So in terms of the practicality, I don't see how that will alter her life. I think that...
But the Americans also imposed a travel ban on her.
Her visa was cancelled.
Yes. That's the one who's saying the travel ban to America.
Well, I am just saying that, but the point is that for me, I think that those are side issues. The fundamentals of how a state, imposes sanctions on leaders, especially on the African continent. This morning, I had a conversation with myself, and I was asking the Luo ancestors, the Jaramugis, the Ogingodingas, and Obotes, whether they could have a chat with the colonialists who ruled this country. I had read the story of Bunyoro Kingdom suing Her Majesty's government for torture, for inhuman, for plunder, for genocide, for torture orchestrated here, not in London, orchestrated here by the British government. I was reading about 4 elders of the Mau Mau in Kenya who are suing the British government for torture. I was also reading the voices of the people of Palestine who think that the UK is backing genocide in Gaza. I was reading sentiments of the impact of the interventions of NATO in the African soil, in Libya and parts of Egypt and things. I was also reading about the UK support to the war in Afghanistan and the impact on the people there. I was reading about the support to the war in Iraq in the names of new weapons of mass destruction, which up to today, I don't know if Kwesi has finally... My point is that world politics is about how you look at Andrew, and you can say, no, Andrew has a bald head. And then when Andrew turns the other side, another person thinks, you who thinks Andrew has a bald head also has a bald head.
No, in other words, you're saying, well, what I could say, that these sanctions are not a question of hypocrisy, it's a question of power. If you have power, you can decide. There are many things you do wrongly, but you would punish maybe your housekeeper or your child for doing them when you actually do them. But I just wanted to discuss another matter related to it. Because you see, when they breach sanction the Speaker here, there is a statement they are making, I don't know whether they are conscious of it, that, look, you crave coming to our country. Because you crave it so much, it is a kind of bread or cake or candy we are taking away from you. But in the process, they are telling us something about ourselves that why does she need to go to the UK anyway? You see what I mean? So essentially, these sanctions will mean nothing if we do not crave going to their country.
I would like to disagree. That's a very narrow way of looking at sanctions. Sanctions are a tool of foreign policy, and they are a way countries manage their relations. So it may not, the end is not what the sanctions stop the individual Anita Among from doing, but what they signal. Because outside of what she cannot do, it becomes very difficult for other EU ambassadors, businessmen from the UK, and all other Western interests to now meet her in her capacity as the Speaker of Uganda, who is a sanctioned individual. So in essence, they've succeeded in isolating her. Number two, it's a sign of displeasure with the actions of the government of Uganda, because in Uganda's order of precedence, she's citizen number 3 after the president and vice president. So that's an escalation on their part regarding their relationship with the Museveni administration. But also from as early as June last year, interacting with these European diplomats, somehow they seemed very convinced that the Right Honorable Anita Among had received money, Russian money, to create this frenzy around the anti-homosexuality bill. First, when they told me this, I couldn't believe it. I found it very weird because Uganda even without Russian intervention, is a very homophobic country. 10 years ago, we had the same debate, the same animated debates in the House. So you don't need Russian money to get Ugandan MPs worked up into signing the bill. But the Europeans were incensed about it, and they felt something needed to be done. So for me, I don't read it as just an independent action of the UK. I don't think the UK would have made such a move without, at least in Uganda, without interacting with the EU or the US and other world powers. So it could be a signal of what more to come ahead of the elections in 2026.
So what do you think is the motivation?
So the motivation is to influence the actions of other leaders or key decision makers in Uganda. Just like when they wanted to send a signal to the security services in Uganda to correct their behavior, they sanctioned Kale Kaihura, who was the powerful IGP of police. So when you are the deputy speaker of the House and you see your boss, the speaker of the House, sanctioned, then you know how to conduct the debate next time there's a contentious matter before it.
Yes, ultimately, whatever sanctions they impose must have a specific effects on you, and they matter so much. Because if I am Anita Among, the choice of me being a speaker and the choice of me visiting the UK, which is most important for me. Because unless why wouldn't Kenya sanction her even if it wished to?
Yeah, but you're focusing on one half of the sanctions that affect her ability to travel or to transact, and I'm saying the sanctions in a way also isolate her. Because even if she's moving to another Commonwealth country, let's say there was a Commonwealth Speakers Conference in Rwanda, even if Rwanda has no problem with her going there, it would be a very awkward presence for her and other fellow speakers. If you're a speaker of another Commonwealth country, to be seen with a sanctioned member of the Ugandan parliament is...
But again, for me, that is the thing. Let me ask you, assuming Uganda sanctioned the Secretary of State of the US, would he be ashamed about it?
No, he wouldn't. But you see, Uganda in this mix is a tool of power, of the powerful.
So this is an instrument of power saying this is how you Africans feel about yourselves towards us. Because you can do the same, it will have no consequence. If we do it to you, it has consequence. It has consequence because we respect it. Because if all other speakers of African parliaments said, well, you sanction her for us, we are going to carry her as our God. It means the sanctions, that signal doesn't mean anything.
They can't, I don't think they would stand up in solidarity with that.
Okay, so that's my point. That ultimately this is about us, not them. They're telling us something about ourselves that we crave for them, that every speaker in an African parliament takes a signal, oh, I need to avoid her. In fact, if Africans were to be clear, it is important to embrace her, if only to say that if you sanction somebody, then for us we shall embrace that person. We will show solidarity so that these sanctions stop meaning something. Let me tell you the most important thing about these sanctions. In fact, these governments want, the UK wants to rule Uganda through these blackmails and threats. And
but you see, Ugandans are not the only individuals sanctioned. They are Russian sanctioned, they are Chinese sanctioned, they are Iranian sanctioned, and all that. So it's about the choice of company you want to keep. Is the average Ugandan elite comfortable with Among keeping the company of North Koreans and Afghanistan warlords?
That is my point.
Can I just chip in there?
You see, ultimately, Western power over us works precisely because we bend to it. In fact, I think that if I was the African Parliament, Association of African Speakers, the very reason...
We have the Pan-African Parliament.
The Pan-African Parliament, if for that matter, all the speakers go there, they need to show solidarity with her. With the time they will realize that their actions
are counterproductive.
They work only because of how we perceive them.
This afternoon...
This is about us, not about them. They understand that we have this desire to visit their countries, to use their systems. Because you see, Russia sanctioned American leaders. Did you know that?
Yes.
No one cares, but if America sanctions it, it appears to be a very big thing. And I think that the non-Western world needs to develop a form of solidarity which has been shown with Russia, because they imposed sanctions on Russia. Russia's economy last year grew at 3.6%. All European economies grew at less than 1%. So if things work like that, the international system will be democratized. For as long as the Western countries hold this power over us, it is difficult. They are trying to say that Museveni and Among should manage Uganda in the way the British want, not in the way the people of Uganda want. In which case the Ugandans are stripped of their sovereignty, their democratic sovereignty, and therefore it is the wishes of the British government that dictate what happens in Uganda, and that's what pisses me off. Yes,
so I wanted to say two things. One, what the point Kwesi was making is that to an average Ugandan elite, going to London, getting the visa or the UK visa is a sign of achievement. They show off.
That's not what he's saying. It is what I am saying.
Yes,
that is what they are working on. Our endless craving for their systems.
Which yes, but for this afternoon she was supposed to meet the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly of Ghana. So I don't think the isolation on the African continent is going to work. But also too, on the African continent there are individuals who have been sanctioned and indicted. President William Ruto was indicted when he was a member of Parliament for Eldoret North. Uhuru Kenyatta, before he became president, was indicted and so the sanctions have moved from the fundamentals that they stand for to a tool of new colonialism, extending the powers of the Western world over the African bloc. And because us Africans are too naive, we think that being associated with going to London is prestigious. I, for example, never applied for a UK visa. I have never applied to go to the US. I can take myself there. I'd rather go to Nigeria or to Nairobi or to Arusha and then sit there.
Andrew,
we're running out of time on this segment.
Andrew, I think your argument is really very valid, but it's just a wish, and it's so unfortunate. Yours, the argument is really valid, but very a wish, because sanctions really come with heavy consequences on a country, and something that Kwesi was trying to bring out, which is a reality, whether we want it or not. Sanctions, consequences in terms of finances, financial consequences on a country, relationships.
Sanctions on individuals, that's what we're discussing.
Yeah, it's
a diplomatic stain.
It is a diplomatic stain, because number 3 in a country.
Why is it a diplomatic stain? If Uganda sanctioned
would it be a stain?
Would it be a stain on Britain?
No.
So exactly.
Because
when other countries of the world sanctioned South Africa, it was a serious.
But what I'm saying is,
let me just put it here. You have your father I'm
asking you a question. If Uganda today sanctioned the Prime Minister of the UK, is it a stain on Britain?
Nothing would happen.
So why is it vice versa?
Because you know.
So
where
this is
we
power.
stand.
Yes,
it's a power play.
And authority. Yes,
it's a new form of colonialism.
So we cannot, as journalists, here stand up to Museveni saying he should not suppress us. But
we can't stand to the UK
somehow.
And when we applaud it, we celebrate it.
I find us deviating from the reasons as to why she was sanctioned.
What are the reasons? And what
corruption.
Okay, why is that an issue? This country has an elected government. You understand me? The system of Uganda has systems of holding a speaker accountable. Why should it be the responsibility of Britain to enforce behavior on our speaker and not us?
But then we have proved as a country that we are not independent. We always run to these people, especially when we need funds and monies.
Okay, they can withhold their money.
The same thing you have been saying that
Rogers, they have been giving us money for the last 60 years of our independence. Are we not still poor?
But we still need these people's money to do what we want to do.
That is my point to you, that it is our mentality. If their money was responsible, Roger, hold a second.
Yes.
If their money was our path to prosperity, why are we still poor? Why are we still poor?
For me,
it means the money is not. It's not the issue. The issue is not the money they give us. It is our mentality about them. This everlasting belief that somehow they hold the key to our future. How can the British think that somehow we Ugandans, whose money has been stolen by the speaker, have no capacity to hold her to account? It requires them.
Andrew,
what is their interest?
That could be true, but still, when we go back to history, we've seen estranged politicians running away from Uganda, seeking solace in these countries. Asylum.
That's my point.
Why don't they stay? Because this place is not safe for them. I can tell you that.
Okay, so
I can tell you right now.
Roger,
yes.
The British who fought for their independence, which country did they run to for sanctuary?
But still,
I'm asking you.
I can tell you.
Which the British and Americans who fought for independence, where country did they run for sanctuary? They had nowhere to go, right? Why do Ugandans think they need to go to the UK?
They can't stay here because we ourselves.
So where did the Americans who fought for independence stay? Okay, where did the Americans who were fighting for independence in their country and had nowhere to stay, where did they go?
Andrew, how many politicians have stayed in Uganda?
Because this is the mentality I am fighting.
After this place felt unsafe for them.
Okay, the Americans fought for independence. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct.
The British fought for independence. It means at that time when there was a dictatorship in their country, they had nowhere to go.
They stayed there.
They stayed there.
And sorted
Why
their
do you
country.
say
And
you
we
have
also
nowhere to go?
stay here.
Why not?
Yes, stay and sort out
This
your
place
country.
has seemed to be unsafe. I can tell you when Amin's
Okay,
government fell.
so America was not when
Was
the
it- was it not unsafe in the US?
So very many people were unsafe here that had power there, but they had to go away and they had to go
Was
to
America safe during colonialism?
I'm asking you, when the Americans were fighting the British for independence, were they safe?
Was that area safe?
Were they safe? They were fighting, dying at the battlefield for their freedom. You stick here and fight for your freedom. This mentality is, let me tell you, for me, I just want to maybe die because I just can't stand the mentality of Africans. Man.
We will deal with this together. No one is dying.
The biggest problem of colonialism was epistemic. This capture of our minds to think that somehow these people are so great and we permanently must listen to them. Let me tell you, I support a lot of the actions they do, but I don't want to be involved. I support gay rights here. And every day, keep away. This is our struggle here. We don't need British, we don't need Americans. If there are human rights being abused in Uganda, that's our business.
That could be true, but you see,
Andrew, the hypocrisy is also on both sides because let's say the issue is about homosexuality. The speaker's statements on the issue also betray her own ideological depth. If homosexuality is truly a Ugandan debate, then why is it that every time she's commenting about it, she thinks the only reason we have this debate existing in Uganda is because there are some foreigners funding it? I find some of these elites who are caught up in
that's why Andrew is saying
who are caught up in these sanctions interestingly the very victims of the system that they think is oppressing them, because many of these Ugandan ministers, permanent secretaries and the others, the very little money that we have here that's paid by our taxpayers, they steal it and buy apartments in London, not
We have taken a break and be right back.
KFM's Hot Seat.
It's hot.
It's live, provocative, and digs deep into the issues. It's KFM's Hot Seat.
Join us at the Business Networking International Expo Uganda 2020.
Real story behind the story. Coming right at you.
Only on 933
KFM.
Welcome back to this segment of this edition of the Hot Seats, featuring a part of the most experienced journalists and panelists to discuss the major events of the week. I have Joseph Sabiti, Rogers Magala, Franka Mujimba, Derek Wandera, and Kwestabar. First of all, I first want to give my monologue. We have only 3 minutes to go. This continent, Africa, has a serious problem. That problem is that our minds, Bob Marley sang a song says, we must liberate ourselves from mental slavery.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
We must emancipate ourselves from colonialism. Our mentality is so colonial. The idea that the British can sanction you and those sanctions mean anything is dependent on one fact, that the perception of the signal, once they give that signal will stick in everybody's mind. If the AU and all other countries of the South rejected that idea, it would lose sense. They only exercise power because we accept the power they exercise. If we rejected it, it would be meaningless. That is 1. 2, the sanctions are not about giving any signal. They are just to say that we want to manage your country on your behalf. Colonialism left, but we have new colonialism, a new way to manage you indirectly. Because Uganda has elected leaders, it is our responsibility as Ugandans to fight against Aneta Among and her gang of thieves in parliament. That's our responsibility, not the British responsibility. So while I believe there should be a war against the kind of corruption we saw at parliament, I don't agree that the British should poke their ugly noses into this business. Why? There's a lot of corruption in Britain. There's a lot of corruption in the United States. We haven't sanctioned them.
Down in the
go to their country, it's collapsing under the weight of corruption.
Yes.
Go to America and see what is happening. Go to Britain, go to France.
The UK dropped 20 points down in the Transparency
how
Corruption
come
Index.
Even that index is theirs anyway.
Yeah, in their own index, they dropped 20 places down.
So what I'm saying is, how come for us, we don't have the moral authority, the power or anything to sanction them? And if we sanctioned them, even then it will be token. And theirs have power over us. That's what you Africans need to think about.
But
I get extremely irritated that they think they have the power to decide which person should govern Uganda and the rulers of Uganda. That now the signal they're sending us that you Ugandans, you are so weak and incapable of governing yourselves. That's how they went into Libya to liberate the people of Libya from Gaddafi. See what has happened to the country. They went to liberate Afghanistan. They were there for 20 years. What happened to it? They have been trying to liberate Yemen. What is the chaos there? That's the liberation they want to bring to Uganda here. Guys, Africans, please open your minds. If you can't, you are doomed. Anyway,
You've quarreled for the whole remaining time.
Just allow me to make one statement about the sanctions. First of all, I think as Ugandans, we are all behind Anita Among. Let her stand her ground, and we are supporting her in whatever she is doing. But second, they speak of parliament. But the other thing I wanted to talk about.
You are standing behind what she's doing.
Pardon?
In public money.
Public money.
No.
In all that
You said you're standing behind.
No,
what?
guarding against the forces of the British, trying to influence what is happening here. That's what I'm talking about. Not. If he's stealing public money, then it is an issue we can handle here as Ugandans, as the Ugandan government. So I'm behind her against guarding.
We have to end the show here. Unfortunately, we'll have run out of time. Thank you so
Andrew
much
has
for joining
quarreled
us.
the entire time of the
The hottest debate on all relevant topics live
On KFM's Hot Seat tonight.
KFM's Hot Seat covers all the relevant topics every weekday, 7 to 8 p.m. Precise, to the point, and accurate. This is KFM News.